Hey, Doug Meeuwsen here. This video is going to be about taking this mouthpiece and threading the top of it so that another backbore can get threaded into this mouthpiece. So I'm going to cut it, and then this will be trashed, and I'm going to make a hole in there and thread it, and then that will be part of a two-piece mouthpiece. It's the kind of thing that comes up a lot. You have a mouthpiece, you want to make screw backbores out of it. You can save one of the parts. You can either save the top or you can save the backbore. In this case, I'm saving the top. This is a Parduba 5-star. I had to honestly find a mouthpiece that I was willing to sacrifice to make a two-piece like this. And no offense to anybody who loves Parduba, but I picked this one as one that I didn't really care about. But you never know. It's probably great for somebody, but I'm going to throw the backbore away because I've never heard anybody talk about how great a Parduba backbore was. But, you know, there's a lot of people that love a Parduba. So maybe somebody who applies a 5-star might saunter in here and want to try some backbores and yada yada. So that's what I'm going to do. So I've got it in the chuck and I've got it indicated and it's nice and straight. You always have to take the time to do that. I have a video of that. And I've already got a scribe mark on here that I'm going to cut it off at that scribe mark. I'm going to get the exact height of this after I cut it. But right now I've got a mark on there, and then I'm going to cut it, and then I'm going to face that off, and that'll be ready for me to bore the hole and do the thread. I'm going to do the thread with a tap, which is the easy way. When I do a mouthpiece, I always do the threads with what we call a single point threading tool, but a tap, and I do that with backbores too. I made a video of how to do it with a tap a die, to make a backbore with a die, because I figured most people would probably do it that way. It's easy and good. And I'm going to do this one with the tap, and it's easy. Anybody who has access to a lathe and really minimal skills can do this job if you do it with a tap and a die, because you don't have to know how to thread on a lathe, etc. So here we go. So I'm going to cut it off with the tool. You could cut it off with a hacksaw. If you have a small lathe, probably a hacksaw is better, because these kind of cutoff tools don't work so good in a weak lathe without a lot of rigidity, but this will work good. There you go. Now I'm going to face this off. I'm going to get it exactly. I want it to be 910 thousandths high, and I'm going to set that up right now. So I faced it off, made it nice and clean, measured it, and I need to take 9 thousandths off of here. Now, I have digital readouts, so I know that this is going to be it right here. So now my top is exactly the right height that I want, which is 910. Now I'm going to start doing this hole. Okay, so these are the steps. The first thing you have to do is you use a center drill to get this bevel, which is built into the center drill. There's a bevel right there. You need to always start with the center drill. Now I have the right bevel that needs to be on there for a drill bit to start nicely in a hole. Now I'm gonna do a drill bit that's kind of almost the size that I need. Not quite. It's a little too small. I'm gonna make a hole, and then I'm going to make that hole bigger on the lathe. This is just drilling a hole. I'm going to go up to that mark. So now I've got a vaguely the right hole there. Now I'm going to make that hole the right size. I'm going to put a notch on the inside. I'm going to show you how to do that, and then we're going to thread that with a tap. So the tool that you use, I used for inside boring. This is an inside turning tool, and it's also the tool that makes the thread relief notch. So I'm going to bore in here with this tool. Then I'm going to plunge this notch when I get right to 250 thousandths in, which is a 1/4 inch. Go in a 1/4 inch to the right size, and then plunge this notch this way, and that'll make a thread relief notch, which allows the two parts, when they thread together, to butt up against each other. Okay, so I want to go in, this hole I want to be 0.340, and it has to be 250 thousandths deep. So the tip of this tool is going to go in 250 thousandths deep, and it's going to be at a diameter of 0.340. The hole that I have already is about 0.320, so I don't have to make a big cut. I'll probably go all in one big cut. I already know where my tool point is, so I need to go 20 thousandths bigger, and you would have to do this by measuring, but my lathe knows where the tool is. But you'll have to measure and then do a couple of cuts and say, okay, here's my last cut, get it exactly at 340. And then for how deep you want to go, see this line? Well, a line like that gives you a pretty good idea. That's not the line I'm going to use. That line is, I don't know, for something else, but a 1/4 inch should be about right here. And if I had a line there, I could go right up to that line. Then I could use a depth gauge, or if I didn't care too much, I could make that line a little bit shorter, so there would be a gap between the parts. That way you know they're going to butt up on the inside if there's a space on the outside. I'm going to get it so it's exactly right, maybe 1/1000th of a gap, which you really can't see. So here we go. I'm at 340, and I'm going to go into 250 deep. Right now I'm facing the end off a little bit. Get back out. Now I'm moving my tool back to 340. Right now I'm facing off the end on the inside, the end surface. Now I'm plunging that notch to make my thread relief gap, just pulling the tool that way, moving it back a little bit. Now I'm done. So what I did was I moved the tip of this, I went like this, I got it in the hole, then went to that way, then faced it off. When I got the right distance in, then I faced it off like that, and then I just kept going and making this notch. Then I pulled it back a little bit to make that notch a little bit wider. But now it's ready, almost ready to take my tap. But I have to do one more thing, and that is I have to have a bevel on the edge of that hole. Otherwise, the tap could conceivably not start terribly straight. If you have a bevel on it, it works way better. A bevel is otherwise called a chamfer. I'm going to do that with a hand tool. Okay, now I'm going to put a tap. And it has to be a bottoming tap, by the way. You don't need with brass, you don't need to put a regular tap. and then a bottoming tap. You can just do this whole job with the bottoming tap. The bottoming tap, the threads go almost to the end of the tap, and then the tap is really flat on the end so it doesn't mar or disturb the flat inside surface that I have at the end of this hole. So here we're getting the bottoming tap. Okay, so now I have the tap mounted in the tailstock. I'm going to slide this up to the part. The tailstock slides pretty easy. You have it lubed up good. It's nice. Get that right up there. And then I have some line. That second line is about where it's going to hit on the inside. I'm going to turn the chuck by hand, and then when it gets right about to that line, I should feel it hit on the inside, and then I'll snug it up on the inside and then back it out. It's a good idea to turn the power off on your lathe so that this thing can't start up with your hand on here. Always wear short sleeve shirts. I guess I have a ring, which you're not supposed to wear, but no watch. I'll take my ring off. My wife won't like that. But now we're going to turn the chuck by hand while the tap is held firmly in the tailstock, and the tailstock can slide, so the sliding of the tailstock lets the tap go into the part as it pulls it in. And it works real easy. See it pulling in like that? Hear that squeaky sound? That's the sound of it cutting. Almost at the end. Getting close. Right about here, I should feel it. Right there. Feel it. Okay. Now back it off. When we back it off, I'm going to pull that way gently so that the tailstock, oops. I just pushed my that was weird. I bumped my tailstock with my carriage and kind of pushed the tang of the chuck out a little bit, so I had to get it back in there. Not a big deal. I'm pulling it this way with my hand a little bit as it gets to the end, and there we go. Now it's a little weird right here. See how this shoulder, it's this way this Parduba looks. I might turn that corner down a little bit because, I don't know, we'll see what it looks like with the back bore in there, but I might shape that down just a shade just to make it look a little bit better. But here's a poor man's air compressor. Works great and cheap. Blow the shavings out, get a backbore to check it. So this is the backbore, the jet tone that I just threaded in the other video, and fits good. Tap and dies are always a little bit loose, I think, but it's kind of good because if you were to silver plate this, then if you have a really good, correct fit, when you silver plate the threads, then it can get tight. So it's a little loose, but it kind of has to, it's better if it's that way. See what it looks a little weird? Well, who knows? I might lop this corner off a little bit to make it look a little better. But if I do that, it's going to cut the size of this mouthpiece off, which is a 5-star. See, this 5 is almost chopped off. So, yeah, that's the only size of that. So I'm not gonna cut this shoulder off because that's where the 5-star size of this Parduba. Sorry, Mr. Parduba, but now you have a Parduba with a jet tone backbore. So, checking with my magnifying glass, you can look in the. You can't probably see it on the camera, but those, yeah. You won't be able to see that. But with here, this is like a 10x loop. The throats on these two parts line up real good. Done with a tap and die. It's more likely to be better, of course, if you single point this and use the threading gears and whatnot of the lathe. But this is easy. Most people can do it this way. Actually, this jet tone, it appears to have a 26 throat, and this is a 27 or something like that. So when you look in this way, you can see that this part is a little bit smaller throat by one size, by the tiniest amount. You can see that it's nice and concentric. So as long as this part is bigger than this point, throat size here is bigger than that throat size, you shouldn't have any issues. If it's the other way, where this one's bigger than this one, sometimes you can get a hiss in the sound, and that's only about 1 in 100 players that gets that. But I've seen it happen, and that also happens if this throat and this throat don't line up concentrically. And honestly, if you look at a lot of mouthpieces that are two-piece, a lot of them don't line up concentrically very well. And most of the time, that doesn't even bother most people, except that I guess it makes, if they don't line up, it makes the throat size oval and smaller. But for some people, if it's not perfect, it's terrible. And the sound just has a loud hiss in it. And that can also come if this part is bigger than this part. I guess when the air hits a ledge in there, it makes a hiss. And if it doesn't hit a ledge, if it's the other way, this part's smaller than this part, then it doesn't cause a problem. Same way that if the parts don't line up, there's a ledge, and it makes like a whistle effect, and it can be really loud, like really loud in some people's playing. I've only seen it with two guys, Tom Brill and Greg Beck, and they had a horrible hiss, and they couldn't even play a two-piece mouthpiece, no matter how good it was. It really didn't work. Anyway, that's the issue with doing a screw backbore mouthpiece, is the throats have to line up. So you got to spend time indicating and get everything straight. Hold your die and hold your tap in the lathe really good, and you're going to be 90% chance of doing a good job. Okay, there you go.